Welcome to the District, Educating AB Together. I'm Peter Light, Superintendent of the Acton-Boxborough Schools, and I'm glad you're here. This podcast is about the people who make our schools come alive every day and work with our kids. Each episode, we'll sit down with a member of our staff to hear their story, why they chose this work, why they're here in our community, and why this moment matters. We're working on a special three-part series around our reorganization initiative. And today, I'm joined by Christy Nealon, principal at the McCarthy Town Elementary School. So welcome, Christy.
Thanks.
I'm excited to learn more about her journey and to share her perspective with you. So, Christy, let's get started.
Sure.
Being a principal right now and anytime is such a complex job. And right now it involves holding a lot of feelings from different members of our school community. Before we start talking about that, how are you doing with all of this?
I'm good. It's not super often that somebody asks the principal how they're doing, so I appreciate that question. Certainly busy and busier than our typical November, and I'm certainly looking forward to Thanksgiving and being able to rest a little. I think in these times when everything's so busy, it's important that we all take the careful time to really pause with our family and friends.
Great. So I think I've found people in all sorts of different roles define good differently when asked, how are they? So when you say you're good, what does that mean?
It means that it's a roller coaster and that right now things are okay. And, we're holding so much that it's sort of hard to identify exactly one feeling to that question.
Yeah, I've known you a long time, so I just wanted to push you on that a little bit.
Pushing a little.
Yeah, that's what I do. So when you think about, the reorganization work that we're doing, and it's not just a plan, but as an experience that impacts real people, what's coming to mind right now?
So I think there's three parts. The first thing is loss, which I think everyone manages differently. The second is teaching and doing my own coping, and then teaching other people how to cope. And the last piece is trying to push myself to think about growth and opportunity in all of this. But walking through those three steps, I think, is what comes to mind first. Also, the other night, someone brought up how thoughtful everyone's being about this process. I think he was a select man, maybe. And I think pride is another sort of unusual feeling that I wasn't imagining in all of this, but in many of the steering committee meetings and school committee meetings and staff forums and family coffees, I've felt this bizarre sense of pride in our community that we're able to do this difficult work together.
I just want to back you up for a minute because you used three words: loss, coping, and growth. And those are three really interesting words to be using thinking about this. And, I heard coping in the middle, But I heard loss first and growth next. Can you just talk about, maybe why do you think those came out like that?
I think because that's how I'm experiencing them. Each phase, and I think that's how my staff and my students and our families are experiencing. Each stage comes with an initial burst of change is hard, and people are thinking about all the things that they'll lose in that change. And then I think maybe because of who I am or the work I've done professionally around social emotional learning, I immediately start to think, how do we help people manage that loss? And the way you help people manage loss and change is to help them cope. And then once you cope, you can start to see these glimmers of opportunity and growth. And it's really important to recognize that you can't push anyone through those three words. You can't start talking to someone about growth and opportunity if they're living in loss, because that feels awful to them. But you can sort of model how you're doing that in your thinking.
So, let's back up. I think this is a great time to actually push pause on this idea of loss. Tell us a little bit about more about you and your history with the school district, because you've been in our schools quite a long time and had some different experiences. Let's add some color.
Okay. So I started my career in Acton-Boxborough as a classroom assistant, then a special ed assistant, then a teacher. Then I left for 4 years to go to center school in Stowe, and then I came back as a principal. I've worked in this district, I think I'm close to 20 years. Andrew and I always joke about that I should be getting a 20-year chair sometime soon, but I left for those 4 years. So I started at Merriam School, did all of those roles, and then came back to McCarthy Town to be principal.
So you've seen a lot.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot.
Yes.
And so.
And a lot of change.
Yeah. So now come back to this idea of loss. And when you talk to staff and students and families, what are just some of the themes that you're hearing that people feel like they're losing?
Yeah. I think they feel like they're losing a sense of autonomy and a sense of agency in the school identity piece. That's kind of the first piece that they talk about. I think they also are experiencing loss of their connections, or it's not even, I want to be careful. It's not that they're actually losing it. It's the perception that they will lose it sometimes, and that they might lose their relationships or their community or their sense of belonging. And that's where so then you cope and you think through cognitively, what are those relationships? How can you maintain those relationships in different ways? How can you rebuild belonging in different ways?
So is there maybe a moment that you can think of that can really illustrate what you're talking about?
Hold on. Yeah, I think as each, last spring when this first started coming up, or even going back years when each budget comes up, each position, each person thinks through the individual impact of their best colleagues might have their job cut, or they might not be able to work with their second grade team or their fifth grade team. Or so that each wave that comes out brings those moments of them being something is going to change for me that's really important. And I think that creates that feeling of loss.
How about you, maybe from a student lens? Are there any moments with students that you can point to over the last few months that, give you a sense of kind of how students are feeling with all of the uncertainty?
Yeah, what's interesting at McCarthytown, and I do think this is probably unique to McCarthytown or different at each of the 6 elementary schools, I think the way the students are experiencing at McCarthytown, it's really abstract right now. And they're just kind of checking concrete information with grownups and then watching the grownups' emotional reaction to that concrete question. For example, our 5th graders asked their teacher if they could write you letters to tell you that they're mature enough to go to the junior high and we should all let them. And they really want to go to the junior high, which I think is endearing and sweet. And they were focused on how do we prove how mature we are. And it just shows they got one piece of concrete information, which was one of the options had older kids at the elementary school going to junior high. The information's a little mixed up because there is no option where 5th graders go anywhere. And then they started to want to have agency within that. So they were their EL unit has them studying how to make social change. And so they brainstormed with their teacher, how can we make some impact on this? How can we have our voices heard? So they decided they'd write you letters that tell you they're mature enough to go to junior high.
So should I be expecting some letters soon?
Soon, yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. I also love the connection. What a powerful moment for a teacher to recognize what's going on in the world for kids, connected to EL, which is the literacy curriculum, and then think about how that also connects to the social work kids are doing and giving them agency, because that actually goes to the second concept that you mentioned, which is this idea of coping. So obviously agency, and you just talked about that from a kid perspective. Are there other strategies that either you've tried to use personally or you've tried to use with your staff that talk about, how are we helping everyone cope with this change?
Yeah, I think the piece about agency, I'm really proud of how leadership has done that around including people in committees, including people in listening sessions. The other coping that we've done at McCarthytown that is just something my family used to do is we really are setting timed opportunities for people to process AB Forward. And we're calling it Give AB Forward Its Pity Party. So at any point, we set this up at the beginning of the year where we're going to have to hold AB Forward, and it is something we are going to have to work through together. But we also have all the work to teach kindergartners, 1st graders, 2nd graders to read, and 4th graders to do fractions, and 6th graders to write persuasive essays. So we have to do all that, and we have to hold AB Forward. And so we set the norm that at any point in any meeting when we're doing the real work of schools, which is teaching children, anyone can say, can we have an AB Forward pity party? And we'll say, how many minutes do you need? And we'll set a timer and we'll talk about AB Forward and process AB Forward together. And that's our consultant from MGH, Elise Wolf, who works with us with students working through challenges, tells us to bind people's challenges and anxieties and worries. And that's a way to bind how big AB Forward can get and how overwhelming AB Forward can get is if we set a timer, name it, leave time to process, and then go back to the real work we need to do. So that has been a super helpful coping mechanism. And I've been excited and proud to see my staff really doing that and having staff really raise their hand in the middle of something and say, can we have an AB Forward minute, and be able to process that way.
That's great. And so, thinking about families with their children at home who might be having a conversation about this, is there any advice you would give to a parent about how to work with their child around this?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to really listen deeply to what the child is asking, to judge what they need to hear on the surface, that concrete level, and to judge what they might need to hear underneath and behind the question or the comment they're making. So, for example, if a student's like, well, what's going to happen if I have to go to a different school? Being able to say something concrete like, oh, you'd be with some of your friends and you'd be with some of your grownups, I don't know much more than that. And then think about why a child might ask that question. And they're asking to get reassurance that everything will be okay. And so being able to kind of name that everything will be okay and you'll have some people and then to also name your own worries about it, to normalize it, but in a developmental way. Like, I have so many questions about this. Those questions sometimes make me feel a little nervous. I wonder who the people are that we could ask questions of. And being able to sort of name the feeling, bind it, and move to the next sort of step for them while modeling being calm and regulated, I think is important.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I think that's fantastic advice for people to be able to work with their children around this. And it sounds like that's something that could work at home and it could work in a classroom.
Yeah. And it works with children and it works with grownups. Like, the truth is that kids and grownups all cope in similar processes. And so the more we can all do that, and it's not a one-sided thing like the adult can cope and the kid has to follow the adult. Actually, sometimes kids cope more naturally than the grownups do.
Wait a minute.
So letting the kids
Are you saying that we're all actually humans?
Yes.
And experience the world in similar ways?
Turns out we are.
Yeah. I thought that's what I was picking up. I just wanted to check my thinking on that. One thing you hit on, the last piece of this was this idea of growth. And, I think you did a great job talking about kind of loss and how you're seeing that play out in schools. And you talked a lot about some strategies to be able to kind of cope with that loss. And that third phase you talked about was now that's moving toward growth. And I'll start with this. Like, let's look forward a year from now. And regardless of what happens and what the decisions are, what could success look like in all of this, looking out 1 year from today?
I think that success would look like people being able to reflect back and feel like, gosh, that was hard, but we did it. And now we have this thing. And it might be a tiny moment of like, you know what the silver lining was? I got to work with this brand new person that I didn't even know, and I love working with this person. Or I got to learn about this part of the curriculum that I wasn't doing as much, but teachers in another school were doing more, and now that's working out. Like, I think success is people being able to see the silver linings, because I don't think we're going to be in this like perfect utopian place in a year. But I think if we walk through this well, which I think we have done so far, people will be able to look back and see silver linings and see the silver linings around them in the moment. I think that will be the marker of the 1 year success point. I think a 5-year success point will be looking back and being like, that was a huge thing. And now we feel settled in a new structure and in a different structure. And I think that will be okay.
I'm going to ask a curveball of a question for the last one.
Okay.
I like to surprise. What's one thing that you see in our educational community that gives you hope that we can navigate this and we can do this together? I
think the piece that I keep telling people that is the most hope is how much faith I have in my principal colleagues. We are an incredible group of learners and adapters, and the way we work through problems. I started the answer thinking about my elementary principal colleagues, but actually I would include all of the staff of AB. Like, the hope that I have is that it's made up of like incredible educators who care deeply about the affective side of things and the learning and academic learning side of things. I think my principal colleagues, the faith we have in each other and the collaboration we have in each other will be able to kind of create a space where everyone else will be able to walk through this together. And I think that also would extend to our central office leadership team. I just have an incredible amount of faith in the leadership team being able to support our students, our staff, and our families.
All right. Thanks so much, Christy. I never try to make it easy on anyone.
Good job. That's what you do as leader.
So with that, I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us on the District Educating AB Together. I'm Peter Light, Superintendent of the Acton-Boxborough Schools. I hope today's conversation with Christy Nealon gave you a deeper look into the people and the stories that shape our schools, and in particular, the challenges around this work of reorganization. Each of us plays an important part in building this community, and together we make education possible. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue exploring the stories behind why me, why here, and why now with all of our staff. Until then, thank you for listening.